I ran across this quote on Instagram by this woman that I follow, Jillian Turecki, and she was talking about how the fiction that we create surrounding people we love sabotages relationships. And she was saying that, we should approach the person by saying, hey, I'm in my head right now and I'm overthinking everything, and I just need to recognize that and take a break. And she's saying that could be like a first step towards saving and repairing a relationship, and it makes perfect sense. The fiction that we create about people we love. And I was thinking about that statement, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, the stories that we tell ourselves about who the people are or what's going to happen is so influential in what happens in our realities of relationship. Even if somebody has done something to cause a problem in the past, if there's been breaches of trust, or if there have been arguments that have been repetitive and somebody's in the same type of pattern or cycle, the only way to really get free from that is to see it happening in a different way. And it sounds silly to some people, but I was just talking to somebody about imagination today, and a lot of people say, oh, I can't imagine that even happening in my life. And so if you can't, then you won't ever see it show up in your life, because you can't even put it in the imagery of your brain. You can't do it in your imagination. And that's where we create our reality, is in our brain, and from the images that we place and hold in our head, as well as the beliefs that we place and hold in our minds. And then the expectation that we have, and the assumptions that we make that people are going to do this, or this is the way it's going to look. When we do that negatively with what we don't want, then we oftentimes see those things show up that we don't want. And this isn't to say that we need to falsify or pretend something didn't happen. But once you have recognized it, brought awareness to it, understood it, learned from it, and have decided to move forward in life and to let it go, or to repair a relationship with somebody, then it has to actually be dropped. And that's hard to do when we have a memory that serves to keep us from making the same mistakes again. And our subconscious, which is always trying to keep us safe from harm. So it will automatically default to warning us when something looks very similar to a situation prior. It'll warn us like, oh, no, we better not be too happy. Oh, no, don't forget, this person did this before. Don't forget, this is a situation that, you were in when this happened. This is the state that you were in. So it's not to say that people should bypass their trauma, or not acknowledge how they felt, and the pain and the grief and the sadness and the hurt and whatever the case is. But do you want to stay there? And how long do you want to keep returning there when you get triggered? When something similar happens to remind you of the situation. I don't want to stay there. And I stayed there way too long, way longer than I had to stay, thinking that that was going to serve me. So you can imagine and create for yourself a new situation by forgetting and dropping the past, and said, okay, that may have happened, fine. But what would have been better? What would have been a more ideal past? Who is to say that you just can't imagine it? Just for a second. So you imagine something different. Okay, cool. If you have a bad dream and you didn't like the dream, one of my coaches said, well, just revise the dream and put it in what you wanted to dream. So what? It's a dream, right? Why can't you do that with things that happened in your past? Now, if people just jump right to that and they don't process any type of emotion or deal with any type of things that have happened as a result in their life, then maybe that might not be so good. But I've never really seen many people try to do that. Usually the process happens naturally. And then they get to the point where they're just in PTSD and always triggered. Well, I mean, PTSD is reliving the past continuously. So why can't you imagine a different past to then foresee and imagine and create a different present and future? It might seem like a weird concept to you, but it actually is very, very helpful. I had this one event happen to me when I was 10 in school, and I was really, traumatized by it. I had, therapy afterwards for years, and then it kind of like stuck with me most of my life and caused a couple of issues. And when I went back and rewrote that memory with the help and guidance of a practitioner I was working with, I was able to then see the memory in a different way. That was a little more peaceful. That was more ideal. That didn't cause mass amounts of trauma. And so that changed my present, because my brain, which is just a tool, it's just doing its job. It accessed the new memory that I placed there. It's just like putting a new app on your phone. I mean, if your apps aren't working and your phone is slow, do you really want to keep those apps? I sure don't. So I put in a different program, accessed that memory, and then in the current, I was free from the problem that was continuously happening. So, if you're looking to work with this or do this kind of work to change at a really core level, and you've done a lot of things that haven't worked so far, and you've been to healers, and you've done Reiki, or you've done this modality and that modality, or you meditate all the time, or you pray, or whatever. Okay, cool. But if you're still having triggers that are sabotaging, especially your relationships with people, or sabotaging your health, or sabotaging your money making, then you really need to look at doing a revision like this in order to free yourself and your imagination, which then will free yourself in your reality. Jim Carrey, he's a famous person that talks about this all the time. He had like a speech that he had given to a high school or something, high school graduates, and he was talking about you being like the projector and whatever pops up in the screen of your life. And I heard him, but I never really got it until much, much later, many, many years later after hearing that, did I actually get it. And so, miserably reliving a situation and allowing the current aspects of your life and everyday happenings to constantly trigger your nervous system, to trigger a body response, to trigger a mental and emotional response, to trigger you to behave a certain way, and to trigger a whole line of false beliefs and stories that aren't happening in the now, that may have happened in the past, but they're not happening in the now. You like to free yourself from that. And, to live every day like that is to stay stuck in your pattern. And you could allow people to try to extract this from you and clear it from you and heal it. And, you could pray it away. You can meditate it away. You can mushroom trip it away. You can do whatever the thing is. But you always still end up coming back to remembering what happened in your memory, because your brain is intelligent. Your unconscious is running the entire show of your reality. It runs your heart, your lungs. It helps you to get from point A to point B when you haven't really driven actually there. And it is always working. When you close your eyes and your consciousness is at rest at night, your subconscious never sleeps. That's why you dream. So you have to address things at an unconscious level. And that will continuously keep you in a more free space the more that you change and shift that and use techniques to do that. repetition, so messages to fall asleep when your brain is in theta, and actively changing your conscious beliefs by affirming in different types of ways. And, if you do these things, you'll actually see yourself change. And, this is for people who have come to a point where they think they've done a lot of things, right? Oh, I've done all this healing. Or I've noticed, oh my gosh, I really thought I was past this relationship thing, but it's popping up again. Same thing, same pattern. Or, oh, I thought I was free of any type of trigger of a person saying or doing a certain thing. And then boom, they do that thing and there you are down a rabbit hole again, being triggered. So, or a health problem, like consistent, persisting health problem that has been nagging. That's really challenging for me to change. And it's really, really hard to put that ball into motion. But you need these things in order to see anything show up differently. New apps, new programs, whatever you want to call it. And it isn't just by affirming. That doesn't work. Just saying affirmations and not amusing in your imagination, not actually putting the belief into your subconscious and reprogramming it doesn't work. It's a little bit effective to get you through your days, but you'll still ultimately end up in a similar spot to where you were when you were originally traumatized, or when the event actually happened, or the experience was of the past. So if you want to have fresh new relationships with some of the same people in your life, and you are still remembering what they have done, you have to remember something different, and you have to put a different belief system in place in your mind and create a different story and roll with that, to give them a chance, to give yourself a chance. And if you don't, you will end up with them showing up the same way, with yourself showing up the same way, with the same type of events happening. Even if you change characters in the story, you'll still end up in that same spot because you still haven't changed that. So anyhow, that's just kind of part one of my starting to discuss these types of things. And I talk sometimes to people in sessions about these things, if I feel like they can grasp the concept. But I hope that you found this beneficial, and I hope that you have questions and that you can send them to me.